Welcome to Coffee Break. Thoughtful conversations for a busy world. Let's begin.
Imagine you're just, scrolling on your phone on a random Tuesday evening. You're half distracted, kind of just killing time, and then suddenly you see it.
Oh, it's always when you least expect it, right?
Exactly. Your best friend, or maybe a former coworker you always kind of secretly competed with, just posted a massive life update.
Right.
Like they bought the exact style of house you've been dreaming of, or they got that huge book deal, or they're like standing on a mountain in Switzerland looking incredible.
Oh, yeah, the Switzerland photos always get you.
They really do. And instantly, your stomach just completely drops. Your chest gets uncomfortably tight.
That visceral physical reaction.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But you dutifully double tap the photo. You type out, "So incredibly happy for you, congratulations," complete with like 3 confetti emojis.
Of course, the digital performance.
Right, the performance. But secretly, beneath all that, you feel this sharp, undeniable wave of just, bitterness. And it totally ruins your evening.
Completely ruins it.
And so the immediate question we want to ask today on this deep dive is, why did your own brain just attack you like that?
Yeah, and it really does feel like an attack, doesn't it? It's this completely universal experience for all of us, yet it's one we almost never dissect, honestly.
No, we just hide it.
Exactly. We are so quick to categorize that specific visceral reaction, that sudden drop in the stomach, as, a moral failure.
Right, like we're just bad people for feeling it.
Yes. We tell ourselves we are being petty. We assume that if we were just better, more evolved people, we would feel pure, unadulterated joy for that former coworker.
Totally selfless joy.
Right. But treating that reaction as a mere character flaw is, it's fundamentally misunderstanding the entire architecture of human emotion.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the way we normally talk about negative emotions is incredibly straightforward. Like, if it makes sense, right?
Sure.
If you step on a rusty nail, you feel physical pain, and that pain tells you to move your foot.
Action and reaction.
Exactly. Or, like, if you lose your job, you feel fear and sadness, which prompts you to seek security. The causality is really clear.
It's logical.
But jealousy feels entirely different. It feels like this rogue, malicious code in our brains that just exists to make us miserable. Like it has no real purpose.
Well, it feels malicious because we just don't understand its biological and psychological utility. Which brings us to the actual source material we are examining for you today.
Yes, let's get into the text.
We are pulling from a highly provocative piece of writing titled Jealousy, The Secret Map of Human Desire.
Such a great title.
It is. And specifically, we are looking at its foundational premise, which is what your jealousy is secretly trying to tell you about your desires.
Right.
The core thesis here is that jealousy isn't a glitch in your emotional programming at all. It is actually an evolutionary automated failsafe. It's a highly calibrated compass.
Okay, but a compass implies we're lost.
Yeah.
It implies there is a correct direction we are failing to travel,
Yeah. Precisely. And to really understand this, we have to look back at the evolutionary psychology of social comparison.
So we're going way back.
Way back. For early hominids, survival was entirely dependent on social cohesion and resource distribution within a tribe.
Because you couldn't survive on your own.
Exactly. If you noticed that another member of your tribe was suddenly securing more food or building better alliances with the leaders, ignoring that discrepancy was a fatal error.
Oh, wow. So if you just sat there and didn't care, you'd starve.
Right. Envy actually developed as an internal alarm system to alert you to a critical deficit in your own standing or your resources. It was literally designed to motivate you to close that gap.
So feeling that sting when you see the Instagram post isn't you being petty. It's actually your Paleolithic brain screaming, "They have secured the winter resources and you are going to freeze."
In a very literal sense, yes. That is exactly what is happening. The biological hardware in our heads hasn't changed at all. Only the environment has.
That is wild.
Right. Today, the resources we're looking at are rarely berries or firewood. They're things like status, creative fulfillment, autonomy, maybe romantic security.
But the alarm bell rings with the exact same intensity as if it were a life or death situation.
Exactly. And the real problem is that while our ancestors knew exactly what to do when that alarm rang,
Like go gather more food.
yes, go gather food, but we have completely lost the ability to decode what the alarm is actually signaling in the modern world. We feel the sting, but we entirely misinterpret the message.
Okay, that misinterpretation seems to be where all the suffering comes from, right? Like, if we accept the premise of the text, that jealousy is an active messenger, the immediate question is why the delivery method has to be so agonizing.
Right, why does it have to hurt so much?
Yeah, if my brain knows I need to focus on my career, why doesn't it just give me a gentle nudge of motivation? Why does it have to use the excruciating sting of envy when I see someone else succeed?
Well, the intensity of that sting is directly proportional to the amount of psychological resistance you are putting up against the message.
Wait, really? Resistance?
Yes. Let's think about the physics of psychological suppression for a second. Imagine you're standing in a swimming pool and you're trying to hold a fully inflated beach ball underwater.
Oh, I hate doing that. It takes a massive amount of, continuous, exhausting physical effort. The ball constantly wants to shoot back up.
Exactly. You have to constantly push down on it with all your weight. Now, in this analogy, the beach ball is a core, unfulfilled desire you have.
Okay.
Maybe it's the desire to be an artist, or maybe it's the desire for a radically different relationship dynamic than the one you currently have.
Something really fundamental to who you are.
Right. But because that desire heavily conflicts with your current life, say maybe you're an accountant or you're in a highly traditional marriage, acknowledging that desire would be terrifying.
It would ruin everything you've built.
Precisely. So what do? You force the beach ball underwater. You use psychological defense mechanisms to keep it submerged. You tell yourself, I'm fine. I value stability over creativity. I am perfectly content.
And as long as I don't see anyone else living that creative life, I can mostly keep the ball underwater.
Oh.
I mean, I might be tired from holding it down, but I can manage it.
Right, you can maintain the illusion. But then you log onto social media or you go to a dinner party and you encounter someone who is actually living out the exact reality you've submerged.
Oh, no.
Yeah. In that exact moment, your psychological grip slips. The beach ball violently breaches the surface of the water and literally smacks you right in the face.
Wow.
That impact, that sudden, uncontrollable eruption of suppressed desire,
Right.
is what we experience as the sting of jealousy.
That fundamentally changes how I view the emotion. Like, the pain isn't the emotion itself. The pain is actually the sudden failure of my own suppression mechanism.
Yes, exactly. That is such a great way to phrase it. The text personifies jealousy as something that is trying to tell you a message.
Right. The phrase secretly trying to tell you.
And the word trying only exists when there is an obstacle. If the door is open, the messenger just walks in and hands you the note.
It's just a normal realization.
Exactly. But if the messenger is banging on the door so hard it shakes the entire house, it's because you have deadbolted it from the inside. The sting is just the volume of the alarm.
Yeah, okay, wait. Let me play devil's advocate here for a second, because if we view jealousy purely as this, noble internal messenger just trying to deliver a vital truth, how do we account for the very real toxicity it produces?
That's a fair point.
Because practically speaking, jealousy often just turns people into cynical, bitter individuals who actively try to tear others down. It doesn't look like a compass at all. It looks like a wrecking ball.
That is a really crucial distinction to make. Jealousy itself is not malicious. It is fundamentally neutral diagnostic data.
Neutral data, okay.
Yes. However, our reaction to that data can be incredibly destructive. When the beach ball hits you in the face, you have a choice. You can either say, wow, I am exhausted from holding this down. I need to acknowledge what this is. Or you can look at the person who triggered the realization and say, I hate them. They don't deserve their success. Their art is derivative anyway.
Oh, I see. So we externalize the discomfort. We attack the trigger rather than actually examining the underlying desire within ourselves.
Precisely. We deploy anger because anger is a much, much safer emotion to process than existential dread.
That makes so much sense.
If I can convince myself that my coworker only got the promotion because they are like a manipulative sycophant, then I don't have to face the terrifying reality that my own career has stagnated because I'm too afraid to take risks.
So tearing them down is just a defense mechanism.
Exactly. It's a shield to protect your ego from the heavy implications of your own unfulfilled desires.
Okay, so if the first step is recognizing that the sting is actually a diagnostic tool, how do we actually read the data? Because the source text calls it a map. And a map is completely useless if you don't know how to read the legend.
This is where we get into the actual cartography of the psyche, which is fascinating. The text refers to it as the secret map of human desire. And the most important thing to understand about any map is that it uses landmarks to point you toward a destination.
Okay, landmarks and destinations.
Right. And the single biggest mistake we make with jealousy is confusing the landmark for the treasure itself.
Wait, confusing the landmark for the treasure. Give me an example of how we do that.
Let's borrow a concept from Carl Jung for a minute, the idea of the shadow self. Jung proposed that we all have parts of our personality, our desires, our traits that we relegate to the dark because society, or maybe our parents, told us they were unacceptable.
So we hide parts of ourselves.
Exactly. So say you were raised in a household that highly valued financial stability and extreme risk aversion. Your natural inclination towards, say, unpredictable creative ventures gets shoved into the shadow.
Because it's not safe.
Right. And so you build an identity, what Jung calls a persona, around being the responsible, reliable one.
So the persona is like the accountant, and the shadow is the aspiring bohemian artist.
Exactly. Now, years later, you meet someone who entirely embodies that shadow. Let's call him David.
Okay, let's talk about David.
So David quit his safe corporate job to open a struggling but deeply authentic indie bookstore. And when you look at David, you feel intense, burning jealousy.
You just resent him so much.
You really do. But here's the critical error we make. You think you are jealous of David. You think David is the problem. Or you might slightly adjust and think you are jealous of the bookstore.
But I don't actually want to run a bookstore. Like, I don't know anything about inventory management or retail leases or hiring staff.
Yeah.
If someone literally handed me the keys to a bookstore tomorrow, I'd probably be miserable.
Exactly. And that sudden realization often causes immense cognitive dissonance. So people just revert to hating David to resolve the confusion.
Because it's easier to just hate him.
Right. But David is just an X on your map. He is merely a topographical feature. To read the map correctly, you have to completely decouple the person from the attribute they represent.
So what does David represent?
David represents autonomy. He represents the sheer courage to reject societal expectations. He represents living in alignment with one's authentic values, regardless of the financial risk involved.
Oh, I see. So the bookstore is just the specific vehicle David used to get that autonomy. I don't want his vehicle. I want the autonomy itself.
Exactly. You want the psychological treasure buried beneath his specific life choices. And uncovering this requires a very specific, almost clinical approach to your own emotions.
That sounds difficult to do in the moment.
It is, but we can actually break this down into a framework for the listener. When the sting of jealousy hits you, you need a protocol to decode the coordinates.
Oh, I love frameworks. How do we do this in real time, when our blood is boiling because someone just posted a photo of their brand new Tesla?
Right, in the heat of the moment. Think of it as a 3-step coordinate decoding process.
Okay, step 1.
Step 1 is the audit. You have to isolate the specific physical trigger. You can't just vaguely say, I'm jealous of Sarah. You have to ask yourself, what specifically about Sarah is triggering the alarm?
So getting really granular.
Very granular. Is it her job title, her salary? Is it the way she speaks in meetings? The fact that she seems to have a lot of free time on weekends?
Okay, let's say it's the fact that Sarah always leaves the office at exactly 5:00 p.m. without ever apologizing, and the boss completely respects her for it.
Perfect example. That's a highly specific trigger. So now you move to step 2, which is the decoupling.
The decoupling.
Yes. You mentally erase Sarah from the equation. You remove her face, her personality, her specific job role. You are left only with the action and the environment.
So if I remove Sarah, the action is leaving a space of obligation unapologetically and retaining the respect of authority figures.
Beautifully stated, yes.
Okay, so I've stripped away the person I resent. I've decoupled them. What's the third step?
Step 3 is the root translation. You translate that decoupled action into a fundamental human need.
A human need.
Right. What is the core resource that action represents? In this case, it's not actually about leaving at 5:00 p.m. It's about boundaries. It's about self-advocacy. It's about possessing an internal sense of worth that isn't entirely dependent on performing endless labor for external validation.
Wow. So applying the framework, I've not jealous of Sarah at all. I'm not even jealous of her schedule.
No.
I am realizing that I completely lack the ability to set boundaries, and I am desperately craving the self-respect required to advocate for my own time.
And look at what just happened there. In 3 simple steps, you transformed a toxic interpersonal resentment into a profound, actionable piece of self-knowledge.
That is incredible.
The map just gave you your coordinates. Your destination isn't destroy Sarah. Your destination is learn to set a boundary. The compass is pointing directly at your own internal deficit.
That is incredibly powerful. But it also feels, exhausting. It requires an immense amount of radical honesty with yourself.
It really does. It's not easy work.
Which brings us to the third part of this equation. We've talked about the symptom, which is the sting, and we've talked about the diagnosis, which is reading the map. But the source text leans incredibly hard on this concept of secrecy.
Yes, the secret.
It's the secret map, and jealousy is secretly trying to tell you. If this tool is so vital for our growth, why does the human mind go to such extreme lengths to hide the map from itself?
Because the cure is often more frightening than the disease itself.
That's a heavy thought.
It's true, though. We hide our true desires from ourselves because acknowledging them requires dismantling the identity we have built to keep ourselves safe.
That sounds like a paradox to me. Why would acknowledging what I actually want threaten my safety?
Let's look at it through the lens of cognitive dissonance. The human brain craves internal consistency above almost everything else.
Right. It wants things to make sense.
Yes. So if you have spent the last 15 years building a career in, say, corporate law, your brain has constructed a massive, intricate scaffolding of beliefs to support that reality.
Things like, this is what success looks like.
Exactly. You tell yourself, I am a rational person, I value prestige, the 80-hour work weeks are totally worth it because I am securing my family's future. Your ego, your entire sense of self, is completely intertwined with that specific narrative.
Right. My identity is the successful lawyer. That is who I am.
Now, suppose deep down, your true desire, your authentic coordinate on the map, is a desperate need to work with your hands, to be outdoors, to cultivate something tangible. Maybe you secretly want to be a landscape architect.
Okay.
If you consciously admit that desire, you create an explosive cognitive dissonance in your brain. You cannot simultaneously be the successful, happy lawyer and the person who yearns to dig in the dirt.
Wow. So if I admit the desire, the entire scaffolding collapses.
Exactly. And to the amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain, the death of an identity feels functionally identical to physical death. It is utterly terrifying.
So admitting it feels like dying.
Yes. Acknowledging the secret map means admitting that the last 15 years of sacrifice might have been pointed in the completely wrong direction.
That is a terrifying thought.
It means facing the prospect of starting over entirely, of being a beginner again, of potentially facing real financial instability, and most paralyzingly, of facing the judgment of your peers who are still happily climbing the legal ladder.
So it's not just the fear of failure we're dealing with, it's actually the fear of success, too.
How do you mean?
Well, if I actually decode the map and realize I want to be a landscape architect, I now have the burden of doing something about it. As long as I keep it a secret, I'm safe.
Right.
I can just vaguely complain about being stressed at the law firm, which is a totally socially acceptable thing to do.
You've hit on the exact mechanism of self-sabotage. Vague dissatisfaction is warm, it's familiar, it requires absolutely no risk.
We love the comfort zone.
We do. But articulated desire requires action. And this is exactly why the brain locks the map away in a vault. We keep the secret from ourselves because remaining in a state of dull, chronic unhappiness is biologically safer than stepping into the unknown chaos of profound change.
This totally explains why we surround ourselves with people who confirm our existing biases. Like, if I'm the dissatisfied lawyer, I'm going to hang out with other dissatisfied lawyers so we can all mutually agree that the law is just a grind, but, it's what responsible adults do.
Misery loves company, as they say.
Right. But if one of my lawyer friends suddenly quits to open a bakery?
Then the beach ball breaches the water.
Exactly.
Their action is a direct, undeniable threat to the narrative you use to keep yourself safe. Their courage highlights your cowardice. And suddenly, your brain deploys jealousy as a weapon.
Wow.
You don't think, good for them. You think, they're being irresponsible. They're going to go bankrupt. What a foolish midlife crisis.
Yeah.
The jealousy is literally the immune system of your ego attacking a threat to your established identity.
That is, wow. But the tragedy here is the long-term consequence of ignoring the hacker, If jealousy is this brute force attempt by our subconscious to break through the firewall and show us the map, What happens to a person who successfully defends against that hacker for their entire life?
That is the real tragedy.
Like, what happens if you actually take the secret to the grave?
Well, we can observe the psychological metabolism of suppressed desire. Energy doesn't just vanish, right? It transforms.
Right.
When you continually ignore the map, the acute sting of jealousy slowly calcifies. It hardens into a chronic, low-grade cynicism.
Cynicism. That's a really interesting word for it.
Think about the most cynical people you know in your life. The people who always have a snarky comment when someone tries something new. The people who constantly dismiss the earnest achievements of others as luck or privilege or selling out.
We all know someone like that.
We do. But that cynicism isn't intellectual superiority, even though they almost always mask it as such. That cynicism is actually the scar tissue of unlived potential.
Oh, wow. The scar tissue of unlived potential. That gives me chills.
It's heartbreaking when you really see it for what it is. When you refuse to decode your own desires, the world becomes an incredibly threatening place because every single person who is pursuing their desire is a walking, talking indictment of your own inaction.
You can't escape them.
You can't. And to survive in that world without collapsing into complete despair, you have to adopt a cynical worldview. You literally have to convince yourself that the game is rigged, that genuine passion is just a myth, and that anyone who appears fulfilled is either faking it or they're just foolish.
So the ultimate cost of keeping the secret isn't just that you don't get to be a landscape architect or an artist or whatever.
Yeah.
The real cost is the gradual shrinking of your entire capacity for joy.
Yes.
You insulate yourself from the pain of jealousy by essentially numbing your entire emotional spectrum.
It is a slow spiritual suffocation. And that is exactly why the source text is fundamentally a message of profound optimism, despite dealing with such a notoriously dark emotion.
Right, because it gives us a way out.
By reframing jealousy as a map, it provides a literal exit strategy from that cynicism.
It's saying that the pain of the sting is actually the antidote to the numbness.
Exactly. The text demands that we face the acute, terrifying pain of dismantling our false identities, because the alternative, the dull, chronic ache of a life unlived, is far, far worse in the end.
It really is.
When you finally unfold the map, when you finally look at the coordinates and say out loud, this is what I fundamentally lack, you reclaim your agency. You are no longer just a victim of other people's success. You become an active participant in your own navigation.
This is absolute total rewiring of how we interact with ourselves. Like, we've moved from seeing ourselves as petty and flawed for feeling envy to seeing ourselves as possessing this incredibly sophisticated, albeit very painful, internal diagnostic system.
It changes everything.
It really does.
Yeah.
So let's synthesize this journey we've just been on for you, the listener. We started with a symptom, right? That visceral, agonizing drop in the stomach when we see someone else's highlight reel online.
The sting.
The sting. And we learned that this isn't a passive emotional weather event that just happens to us. It is an active messenger, constrained only by the force of our own psychological suppression.
The beach ball under the water.
Exactly. Then we looked at the diagnosis. Jealousy is a map, but we have to use the 3-step framework to actually read it. We have to decouple the person we resent from the core human need they represent.
Right. The person is just the topographical landmark. The need is the actual treasure.
Yes. And finally, we explored the cure. We have to understand that we hide this map from ourselves because the ego prefers the safety of familiar dissatisfaction over the terrifying vulnerability of pursuing authentic desire.
Beautifully summarized. And this brings us to the practical mandate for you as you navigate the rest of your week.
Yes. How do we use this?
The paradigm shift only matters if you actually apply it. So the next time you feel that sudden, ugly wave of envy, whether it's sitting in a boardroom or scrolling on your phone late at night, your imperative is to short-circuit your default biological programming.
Don't just double tap and seethe.
Exactly. Do not retreat into cynicism. Do not project your hatred onto the target. Feel the sting. Recognize that your psychological beach ball has just breached the surface, and lean into the discomfort.
Run the audit.
Run the audit. Strip away the person entirely. Isolate the need, and ask yourself the hardest question a human being can possibly ask.
Yeah.
What is this pain secretly trying to tell me about the life I am too afraid to build?
Lean into the sting. Unfold the map. I mean, it's incredibly daunting, but it really seems like it's the only way forward.
It is the only way to true fulfillment.
But I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over today as we wrap up. We've established that jealousy points us toward our unadmitted desires. But think about the exact moment you finally cross that threshold.
The moment of realization.
Yeah, The moment you look at the map, you decode the coordinates, and you finally say out loud, yes, that is what I want. Does the jealousy instantly evaporate because the messenger has finally completed its delivery?
That's the big question.
Or, the moment you acknowledge that first secret, does the map simply redraw itself right before your eyes, revealing a brand new, even deeper psychological continent you now have to explore? Keep reading your maps. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Thanks for spending this time with us on Coffee Break. If this conversation stayed with you, you can find more episodes here on the channel. Until next time, take care.